The boardroom fell silent as the heavy double doors clicked open with deliberate precision. Ramona Harrington froze mid-sentence, her laser pointer hovering uselessly over the projected quarterly forecast as every executive head turned toward the entrance. There stood Vivian Lang, poised and radiant in a tailored navy suit, her dark hair swept into a flawless chignon, her eyes locking onto Ramona's with a mixture of love, defiance, and something far sharper, years of buried pain. "Ladies and gentlemen," the board chair announced in a clipped tone, "allow me to introduce our newest and largest investor, Ms. Vivian Lang, who has just acquired a commanding 18% stake in Nexus Innovations, effective immediately." Ramona's stomach dropped like an anchor into freezing water. This could not be happening. The secret they had guarded for 3 long years, the private vows exchanged in a quiet courthouse in Marin County, the rings hidden in separate safety deposit boxes, everything was about to detonate in front of the very people whose conservative dollars kept her company afloat. She forced her face into a mask of professional calm, even as her mind screamed betrayal. Vivian had promised never to force this, never to weaponize their love against the empire Ramona had sacrificed so much to build. Yet here she was, stepping forward with measured grace, extending a hand to the chair while her gaze never left Ramona's. The room buzzed with surprised murmurs, but Ramona heard none of it, only the pounding of her own heart and the echo of her mother's voice from last week's call. "You cannot keep living this way, Ramona. The investors will flee if they ever learn the truth, and your father and I will not stand by while you throw away everything we taught you." The meeting dragged on in a haze of numbers and handshakes, but Ramona's focus remained locked on Vivian, who took her seat at the far end of the long oak table, calm as a storm about to break. Every glance they exchanged carried the weight of unspoken arguments, late-night whispers in their hidden apartment in No Valley, the way Ramona had canceled their 3rd anniversary dinner for an emergency investor call, the way Vivian had swallowed her hurt and smiled anyway. By the time the session adjourned, Ramona's hands trembled as she gathered her notes. She waited until the last board member filed out, then crossed the room in 3 quick strides. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed, voice low but edged with panic. Vivian tilted her head, a small sad smile playing on her lips. "Protecting what is mine," she replied softly. "You built this company on lies, Ramona, on the lie that you are unattached, uncommitted, available for their old world expectations. I am done watching you pay that price alone." Ramona glanced over her shoulder at the empty doorway, her pulse racing. The stock price had already dipped twice this quarter on rumors of leadership instability. Another revelation like this could tank it completely. Her family back in Connecticut would disown her publicly. The conservative donors who had seeded Nexus with millions would pull out in disgust. She had chosen this path, hidden their marriage to shield the company, to honor the expectations drilled into her since childhood, success above all appearances, above truth. Yet looking at Vivian now, the woman who had held her through panic attacks after brutal board battles, the woman whose laughter once filled their secret home with light, Ramona felt the first crack in her carefully constructed armor. "You knew the deal," she whispered. "We agreed until the IPO stabilized, until the board accepted me as CEO without questions." Vivian's eyes hardened. 3 years, Ramona. 3 years of anniversaries spent alone, 3 years of me pretending to be just another investor at industry events while you introduced me as a casual acquaintance. I invested everything I had in you, not just money but my future, my heart, my dignity. And now I am taking control of the narrative before you destroy us both, trying to protect something that was never worth losing me over. Ramona stepped back, her back hitting the cool glass wall overlooking the glittering San Francisco Bay. Memories flooded her unbidden. The night they met at a Women in Tech mixer 2 years before the wedding. Vivian had been the only person in the room who saw past Ramona's polished CEO facade, asking real questions about dreams, not just metrics. Their first date had stretched into dawn on a quiet bench in Dolores Park, sharing stories of family pressure, Vivian's own parents still unaware of her orientation, Ramona's mother already pushing blind dates with suitable sons of country club friends. Love had come fast, fierce, and terrifying. The decision to marry in secret had seemed wise at the time, a way to claim their happiness without inviting the world's judgment into their boardrooms and living rooms. But wisdom had curdled into regret. Ramona could see it now in the tight set of Vivian's jaw, the way her fingers gripped the portfolio like a shield. "I cannot do this here," she said, voice breaking slightly. "Not with the entire executive team 1 floor away." Vivian nodded, once her expression unreadable. "Then meet me tonight at our place. No more delays, no more excuses. We face this together, or we end it together." With that she turned and walked out, leaving Ramona alone in the suddenly too large boardroom, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. Down the hall her assistant Sarah waited with a fresh coffee and a worried frown. "Everything all right, Miss Harrington?" she asked. Ramona forced a nod, swallowing the lie that had become her second skin. "Just unexpected developments," she muttered. "Send the updated projections to legal and clear my calendar for the evening." Sarah hesitated, then nodded, disappearing down the corridor. Alone again, Ramona sank into her chair at the head of the table, staring at the spot where Vivian had stood. The price of her ambition had always been high, but until today she had never realized it might cost her the only person who had ever made the fight feel worth it. The drive home through evening traffic felt endless. Ramona's mind replayed every choice, every compromise. The time she had told her mother she was too busy for relationships, the charity gala where she had danced with a male colleague for appearances while Vivian watched from the shadows, the board meeting last month where a major investor had joked about Ramona needing a good wife to soften her image. Each decision had seemed necessary, each one a small cut to the bond she shared with Vivian. Now those cuts threatened to bleed them both dry. When she finally pulled into the underground garage of their discreet No Valley townhouse, the lights were already on. Vivian stood in the kitchen pouring 2 glasses of the Cabernet they had saved for special occasions that never seemed to arrive. "We need to talk," she said without turning around. Ramona closed the door behind her, the sound echoing like a finality. "Yes," she whispered, "we do." And for the first time in 3 years she let herself feel the full weight of what hiding their love had truly cost them both, the sleepless nights, the swallowed tears, the slow erosion of trust. The conversation that followed stretched deep into the night, unraveling years of carefully maintained silence and setting the stage for a reckoning neither could escape. The morning after their confrontation dawned gray and unforgiving over San Francisco. Ramona woke to an empty bed, the sheets on Vivian's side already cool. Downstairs she found a note in Vivian's elegant handwriting: "Board meeting at 10. Do not cancel. We finished this today." Her stomach twisted. The company was scheduled for a critical strategy session with key stakeholders, and now Vivian would be there not as the loving wife, but as the investor holding the largest single stake, ready to demand answers Ramona had avoided for years. She dressed with mechanical precision, the charcoal suit she reserved for battles slipping over skin that still carried the faint scent of last night's tears. In the mirror her reflection stared back, composed yet haunted. How had it come to this? The woman who had clawed her way to the top of Nexus Innovations now facing the very love she had hidden as a threat. Her phone buzzed, her mother's weekly check-in call. Ramona let it ring twice, then answered, forcing brightness into her voice. "Hi, Mom. Everything fine at home?" Eleanor Harrington's voice carried the familiar edge of disapproval. "I saw the preliminary earnings report online, Ramona. The analysts are nervous. You need to project stability. A family man image would help. Have you considered that nice young lawyer I introduced you to last Christmas?" Ramona gripped the phone tighter, her knuckles whitening. "Mom, we have talked about this. I am focused on the company." Alongside traveled across the line. "Focused or hiding, dear? Your father and I only want what is best. The world is not kind to women who choose differently." Ramona ended the call with a murmured excuse, her chest tight. The prejudice she had internalized since childhood, the same prejudice that had convinced her to keep Vivian a secret, now felt like chains tightening around her throat. At the office the boardroom filled quickly. Vivian arrived last, taking her new seat with quiet authority. The agenda moved through routine items, but tension crackled beneath every word. When the floor opened for new business, Vivian stood. "I have concerns about leadership transparency," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Nexus has grown under Ms. Harrington's vision, but certain personal matters risk destabilizing investor confidence." Ramona's heart hammered. She met Vivian's gaze across the table, silently pleading. "Not here. Not like this." The chair leaned forward, intrigued. "Please elaborate, Ms. Lang." Vivian paused, her eyes never leaving Ramona's. "Personal relationships affect judgment. If the CEO maintains undisclosed ties that could be perceived as conflicts, we all deserve clarity." Gasps rippled through the room. Ramona rose slowly, her chair scraping loudly. "This is neither the time nor place," she began, but Vivian cut her off gently yet firmly. "It is exactly the time, Ramona. You have asked me to wait for 3 years. I have waited. The board deserves to know who you really are, and so do I." The room erupted in murmurs. Sarah, the assistant, hovered near the door, eyes wide. Ramona felt the walls closing and memories flashing of the day she had proposed in their hidden backyard garden under string lights. Vivian's tearful yes, the way they had celebrated alone because telling anyone risked everything. She had justified the secrecy as protection not just for the stock price but for their fragile new marriage against a world quick to judge women like them. Now that justification lay in ruins. After the meeting adjourned in chaos, Ramona cornered Vivian in the private elevator. "You promised you said you understood the risks." Vivian turned, her expression a mix of exhaustion and resolve. "I understood the risks to your career. I never agreed to sacrifice my entire identity for it. Every time you chose a board dinner over our plans, every time you introduced me as a colleague at parties, I died a little inside. Do you know what it feels like to love someone who treats your relationship like a liability?" Ramona's throat closed. "I was protecting us both. The investors are old guard, Vivian. One whiff of scandal and the funding dries up. We would lose the company, the house, the life we built." Vivian laughed bitterly, a sound that cut deeper than any shout. "The life we built, or the life you built while I stayed in the shadows? I have my own career, Ramona. Hale Capital is thriving and I poured millions into Nexus not because I believed in the company but because I believed in you. Now I am calling in that investment on my terms." The elevator doors opened to the lobby and Vivian stepped out, leaving Ramona alone with the echo of her words. That afternoon, Ramona locked herself in her office, staring at the framed photo, hidden in her desk drawer, the only evidence of their wedding day, two women smiling under a simple oak tree, rings glinting in sunlight. The moral weight pressed down. Was she a coward for hiding or a survivor for enduring? Her phone lit up with a text from her sister Lydia back east. "Mom says you sound off again. Call me. We worry about you isolating yourself." Ramona deleted the message without replying. Isolation had become her armor, but now it felt like a cage. Evening brought no relief. Vivian waited at home again, this time with documents spread across the dining table, financial statements showing her stake, and a draft press release titled Leadership Authenticity at Nexus Innovations. "We can do this the right way," she said softly. "Announce together, face the backlash as a team." Ramona sank into a chair, head in hands. "You do not understand. The board will vote me out. The stock will plummet. Our employees will suffer." Vivian reached across the table, her fingers brushing Ramona's. "And what about us? Do we not suffer every day this lie continues?" The question hung between them, heavy with the accumulated pain of missed milestones, hidden anniversaries, and the slow poison of unspoken truth. As night deepened, their conversation turned to the early days, the spark at that tech mixer, the first tentative kiss in a parked car overlooking the Golden Gate, the way Vivian had supported Ramona through the grueling climb to CEO. Those memories clashed with the present reality of ultimatums and exposed stakes. Ramona realized with chilling clarity that every decision to protect the company had chipped away at the foundation of their marriage. The price was no longer abstract, it was the woman sitting across from her, eyes red-rimmed but determined. By midnight they had reached no resolution, only an uneasy truce to face the board again tomorrow. Ramona lay awake long after Vivian slept, wondering if love could survive the very ambition that had once drawn them together. The second board meeting in as many days felt like walking into a minefield. Ramona arrived early, the city fog still clinging to the skyscraper windows. Sarah had already set out water pitchers and notepads, her usual efficiency now laced with nervous glances. The whispers had started overnight, anonymous posts on industry forums speculating about Nexus leadership and sudden major investor moves. Ramona smoothed her skirt, forcing steady breaths. She could still feel Vivian's touch from the night before, the tentative embrace that had ended in silence rather than resolution. Vivian entered precisely on time, her presence commanding immediate attention. Today the agenda included approval of the next funding round, and Ramona had prepared remarks emphasizing stability. But as soon as the chair called the meeting to order, Vivian spoke. "Before we proceed, I move to table the funding vote until full disclosure of all material personal relationships among leadership is provided." The room stilled. Ramona's mouth went dry. This was the line in the sand. The chair, an older woman named Margaret Thorpe, who had mentored Ramona for years, raised an eyebrow. "That is quite the request, Ms. Lang. Care to elaborate?" Vivian stood tall, her voice clear and unwavering. "Transparency builds trust. If the CEO has undisclosed commitments that could influence decisions, the board and investors deserve to know." Ramona felt the blood drain from her face. She rose, her chair scraping. "I assure everyone there are no conflicts. My personal life is exactly that personal. Vivian turned to her, then the pain in her eyes unmistakable. Is it Ramona? Or is it a carefully maintained fiction that protects your position at the expense of everyone who loves you? Gasps echoed. Margaret's face hardened. Miss Harrington, if there is something we should know, now is the time. Ramona's mind raced through scenarios: stock plunges, lawsuits from conservative shareholders, her mother's disappointed silence. She had spent years cultivating an image of focused professionalism, an image that left no room for a wife no matter how deeply loved. The moral dilemma clawed at her: was the lie a necessary shield or a profound betrayal of the woman who had stood by her through every late night and crisis? I need a moment, she managed, stepping out into the hallway. Vivian followed, closing the door behind them. You are forcing my hand, Ramona whispered. Vivian's expression softened, but her resolve held. I am forcing the truth. Remember the night you proposed. You said our love was stronger than any boardroom, any family expectation. Was that a lie too? Ramona leaned against the wall, the cool surface grounding her. No, it was not. But the world changed nothing. My family still sends me profiles of eligible men. The investors still make jokes about settling down. One public announcement and everything I built crumbles. Vivian stepped closer, her hand hovering near Ramona's arm. Then let it crumble. We will rebuild together. But I cannot keep being your secret. It is killing me. Back in the boardroom, the tension had thickened. Margaret cleared her throat. Miss Harrington, we await your response. Ramona returned to her seat, every eye on her. The words stuck in her throat. Vivian sat quietly, hands folded, the picture of patience. In that moment, Ramona saw the full cost of her choices, not just financial but the slow erosion of Vivian's spirit, the way her once vibrant laugh had grown rarer, the way she had started attending solo events just to feel seen. The internal conflict raged: love versus legacy, authenticity versus survival. I have maintained a private relationship, she began, voice barely steady. It does not affect my leadership. A board member snorted. Private or hidden? There is a difference. Vivian spoke again, her tone measured. The relationship is with me. We have been married for 3 years. Silence crashed over the room like a wave. Ramona's world tilted. The secret was out, and with it the fragile dam holding back years of pressure. Margaret recovered first. This is highly irregular. We will need time to assess impact on shareholder value. Ramona sank into her chair, the weight of exposure crushing. Vivian reached under the table, her fingers finding Ramona's in a brief hidden squeeze, a gesture of solidarity amid the storm. The meeting adjourned in disarray, executives filing out with stunned expressions. Sarah lingered, offering a sympathetic nod before leaving. Alone with Vivian, Ramona turned. You did it. You really did it. Vivian's eyes glistened. I did it for us. For the woman I fell in love with, not the CEO hiding behind a mask. They drove home in silence, the city lights streaking past like accusations. At the townhouse, Ramona's phone exploded with notifications. Her mother had seen the leaked rumors, already demanding explanations. The family pressure she had feared for years now materialized in a string of missed calls and texts. How could you embarrass us like this? What will people say? Vivian poured wine again, the same bottle from the previous night, now a symbol of their unraveling. Talk to me, she urged. Ramona set the phone down. I am terrified. Not just of losing the company but of losing the version of myself I built to survive. You make me question every sacrifice. Vivian sat beside her. That is what love does, Ramona. It forces us to see the price we pay for pretending. As they talked through the night, the layers peeled back, revealing deeper wounds. The time Ramona had missed Vivian's promotion celebration for an investor dinner. The way Vivian had quietly funded a family vacation Ramona's parents never knew included her. Each revelation carried its own sting, but also the first glimmers of understanding. By dawn, exhaustion claimed them, but the confrontation had shifted something fundamental. Ramona lay awake watching Vivian sleep, realizing the true betrayal had not been the reveal but the years of asking her wife to remain invisible. The social prejudice she had internalized, the moral compromise of choosing career safety over shared truth, now demanded reckoning. Tomorrow the board would vote on her future, the markets would react, and their marriage would face its greatest test yet. The board's emergency session convened at dawn the following day. Ramona arrived with dark circles under her eyes, her usual impeccable posture slightly slumped under the invisible weight of exposure. Vivian had offered to stay home, but Ramona had insisted on her presence. We face this together, she had said, echoing Vivian's own words from the night before. Now as they sat side by side at the long table, the atmosphere crackled with judgment. Margaret Thorpe opened the meeting with a heavy sigh. The press has already picked up the story. Stock futures are down 4%. We need a plan. Ramona spoke first, her voice steadier than she felt. I acknowledge the lack of transparency. My marriage to Vivian Lang does not compromise my ability to lead. In fact, her investment demonstrates confidence in Nexus. A male board member leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Confidence or conflict of interest? How do we know decisions were not influenced by personal ties? Vivian interjected calmly. Every investment I made was based on due diligence, not emotion. But the point is larger. Hiding who we are should not be a requirement for success in this industry or any other. The debate raged for hours, arguments circling morality, legality, and market perception. Ramona listened to each one, feeling the internal fracture widen. Her ambition had always been her armor, forged in the fires of her conservative upbringing, where success meant fitting the mold. Now that mold lay shattered, and she questioned whether the pieces were worth reassembling. A break was called and she stepped onto the rooftop terrace overlooking the bay, the wind whipping her hair. Vivian joined her moments later. You are quiet, Ramona said. Vivian leaned on the railing. I am giving you space to decide what you truly want. Not what the board wants or your family wants. Just you. Ramona's eyes stung. I want both. The company and you. Is that so wrong? Vivian turned to her, the city spread out behind like a backdrop to their private war. It is not wrong to want both. It is wrong to sacrifice one for the other indefinitely. Remember when we first talked about coming out? You said after the next round of funding. Then after the IPO. Then after the next earnings beat. The goalposts kept moving, Ramona, and I kept waiting. Flashbacks assaulted Ramona, the weekend they had spent in wine country celebrating their first anniversary in secret, toasting to forever, while Ramona checked emails obsessively, the Christmas when she had flown home alone to Connecticut, leaving Vivian to spend the holiday with friends. The quiet tears Vivian had wiped away when Ramona chose a last-minute strategy session over their planned trip to Hawaii. Each memory highlighted the trade-offs, the slow accumulation of resentment. Back in the boardroom, the vote loomed. Margaret addressed Ramona directly. We are prepared to support you through this transition, but only if you commit to full openness moving forward. No more secrets. Ramona glanced at Vivian, whose hand rested lightly on the table within reach. The moral dilemma crystallized. Love demanded honesty, the company demanded caution. She thought of her employees, the team she had mentored, the vision she had poured her soul into. Losing it all would hurt, but losing Vivian would destroy her. I commit, she said finally. Full disclosure starting now. The room exhaled collectively. Votes were cast and remarkably the board retained her as CEO with conditions, quarterly updates on personal matters, and a joint statement with Vivian. The decision brought relief but no triumph. As they left the building together, Ramona felt the first stirrings of freedom, mixed with grief for the version of herself that had believed hiding was strength. That evening family pressure intensified. Her mother arrived unannounced at the townhouse. Eleanor Harrington's face a mask of controlled fury. I raised you to be better than this, she said the moment the door closed. Hiding a marriage like some dirty secret, then springing it on the world. What about your father's health, the stress this will cause? Ramona stood tall, Vivian at her side. Mom, this is my life. My choice. Eleanor shook her head. Choices have consequences, Ramona. The country club has already called. Friends are asking questions. You have embarrassed us all. Vivian stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. Mrs. Harrington, I love your daughter. We built a life together despite the world telling us it was impossible. Perhaps instead of shame you could try understanding. Eleanor looked between them, her eyes softening for the briefest moment before hardening again. Understanding will not fix the damage. With that she left, the door clicking shut like a period at the end of a painful chapter. Ramona collapsed onto the couch, the confrontation draining her last reserves. Vivian knelt beside her. You do not have to carry this alone anymore. They talked late into the night, unpacking the layers of guilt and expectation. Ramona confessed the nights she had lain awake wondering if she was selfish for wanting both career and love, the morning she had chosen silence over honesty to avoid rocking the boat. Vivian shared her own awakening the moment she realized investing in Nexus was as much about saving their marriage as it was about business. The emotional toll became clear. Each had paid in loneliness and doubt, in the slow fading of joy. Yet in the sharing came the first threads of healing. The next morning, news outlets buzzed with the story, some supportive of the authenticity, others critical of the deception. Ramona's phone rang constantly, but she silenced it, focusing instead on drafting the joint statement with Vivian. As they worked side by side at the kitchen table, Ramona felt a shift, the weight lifting slightly. The prejudice of society and family remained, but for the first time she faced it not as a secret keeper but as a woman owning her truth. The price had been steep, but perhaps the reward of wholeness would prove greater. Weeks blurred into a whirlwind of damage control and rebuilding. The stock price stabilized after an initial dip, buoyed by Vivian's public show of support and several key investors who praised the transparency. Ramona threw herself into work with renewed vigor, but now every decision included Vivian's input, not as a hidden influence, but as an acknowledged partner. Yet the internal scars lingered. In quiet moments she replayed the boardroom, reveal the looks of surprise and judgment, the way some colleagues now avoided eye contact in the halls. One afternoon Sarah knocked on her office door. "There is a call from your sister. She sounds upset." Ramona took the call, bracing herself. Lydia's voice crackled with anger. "Mom is beside herself, Ramona. She canceled the family reunion because of the gossip. Dad is not speaking to anyone. How could you drop this bomb without warning us?" Ramona closed her eyes. "I was protecting myself, Lyd. Protecting us." Lydia scoffed. "Protecting or ashamed? You know how they are. They raised us to fit in, not stand out." Ramona's grip tightened on the phone. "Standing out is what got me here. The company, the life I have. And Vivian is part of that life, whether they accept it or not." The call ended in tears and accusations, leaving Ramona drained. Vivian found her later in the office kitchen, staring into an untouched cup of coffee. "Family again," she guessed, wrapping her arms around Ramona from behind. Ramona leaned back into the embrace. "They see it as a betrayal. Like I chose you over them." Vivian kissed her temple. "You chose truth over pretense. That is not betrayal, Ramona. It is courage." They stood like that for long minutes, the quiet a balm after weeks of chaos. But courage had its own cost. Ramona had lost 2 major clients who cited personal values, the whispers in industry circles about her judgment. Each loss stung, reminding her of the trade-offs she had once accepted without question. A turning point came during a weekend retreat organized for the executive team. Held at a secluded resort in Napa, the agenda included team building and strategy, but Ramona knew it was also a test of the new normal. Vivian attended as an official advisor, her presence no longer hidden. During a group hike, one of the younger executives, a woman named Elena, pulled Ramona aside. "I just want you to know I admire what you did. Coming out like that took guts. My sister is gay and she hides it at her job. Seeing you own it gives her hope." Ramona blinked, surprised by the validation. "Thank you. It has not been easy." Elena smiled. "Nothing worth having is." That conversation lingered, offering a glimpse of the awakening possible beyond the pain. Back at the resort that evening around a fire pit, the conversation turned personal. Margaret, the chair, raised her glass. "To leadership that evolves." Ramona met Vivian's eyes across the flames, the shared history passing between them unspoken. Later in their private cabin, Vivian traced the lines of Ramona's face. "You have changed. Softer somehow." Ramona nodded. "Losing the secret feels like losing armor, but maybe I do not need it anymore." They made love that night for the first time in months, not with urgency but with the tenderness of rediscovery, the emotional connection deeper than any physical act. Yet the drama was not over. A rival investor surfaced with a hostile takeover bid, citing leadership instability as justification. Ramona spent sleepless nights poring over counter strategies, Vivian by her side offering insights from her own financial expertise. The betrayal felt personal. The rival had once been a mentor figure, who now used the revelation against her. In a heated conference call, the rival sneered, "Your personal choices reflect poor judgment, Miss Harrington." Ramona held her ground. "My personal choices reflect honesty." The call ended in stalemate, but the pressure mounted. Family intervention arrived via a surprise visit from her father. He sat stiffly in their living room, refusing to look at Vivian. "This lifestyle has cost you everything, Ramona. The respect, the stability." She countered quietly. "It has cost me pretense, Dad. I am happier now, even with the struggles." He left without reconciliation, the divide widening. Vivian comforted her afterward. They may never understand, but you are building a new family here with me, with the people who see you fully. The words soothed, but the ache remained a reminder of the social prejudice that refused to yield easily. Through it all, Ramona's internal conflict evolved from fear of exposure to grief over lost time. She scheduled regular therapy sessions, exploring the roots of her hiding, the childhood lessons that equated difference with danger. Vivian attended a few joint sessions, their dialogues raw and healing. One evening, after a particularly emotional session, Ramona turned to Vivian in bed. "I am sorry for every time I made you feel secondary." Vivian smiled through tears. "Forgive you. Now forgive yourself." The awakening was gradual but profound, shifting Ramona from defender of secrets to advocate for authenticity. The takeover threat loomed larger, but with Vivian's stake and the board's renewed support, they mounted a defense that highlighted the company's resilience. Public opinion began to shift, articles praising their story as a milestone in corporate diversity. Ramona stood taller each day, the price of her past choices now balanced by the promise of a future built on truth. The final board vote on the takeover defense arrived on a crisp autumn morning. Ramona entered the room hand in hand with Vivian, no longer hiding the simple gold bands that symbolized their union. The executives nodded in quiet acknowledgement, the atmosphere markedly different from the shock of weeks prior. Margaret called the session to order. "We have reviewed all proposals. The motion to reject the hostile bid stands." Votes were cast unanimously in favor. Ramona exhaled, the victory tasting sweeter for the journey it had required. In the aftermath, she addressed the team. "This company thrives not despite our differences, but because of the strength they bring. Transparency is our new foundation." Applause followed, and for the first time Ramona felt the weight lift completely. Later that evening at home, they celebrated quietly, the two of them cooking dinner together, laughter filling the kitchen for the first time in months. Vivian raised her glass. "To us. To choosing truth." Ramona clinked hers. "To paying the price and finding it was worth every penny." Yet reflection brought deeper questions. Ramona sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights, Vivian curled beside her. "I keep thinking about the moments I chose the company over you. The anniversaries, the holidays, the quiet hurts I ignored. Was I right to fight so hard for this empire, or did the fight blind me to what mattered most?" Vivian rested her head on Ramona's shoulder. "You were surviving, Ramona. The world taught you that survival meant hiding. Now we are teaching it something new." News of their story spread beyond business circles, inspiring letters from young women across the country sharing similar struggles with family and workplace prejudice. Ramona answered each one personally, her own awakening fueling a quiet advocacy. Her mother sent a tentative email, not an apology but an opening, a small step toward understanding. The family wounds would take time, but the door had cracked. In the end, the drama had forged them stronger. Ramona's decisions had carried heavy costs, lost investors, strained family ties, months of emotional turmoil. Vivian had paid too in patience and pride. Yet the trade-offs had led to a partnership no longer fractured by secrets, but strengthened by shared battle. As they watched the sun set over the bay, Ramona turned to Vivian. "I almost lost you trying to save everything else." Vivian smiled. "You never lost me. You just had to find your way back." The question that lingered for Ramona and now hung in the air for anyone who had followed their journey was simple yet profound. In a world that demands women choose between ambition and authenticity, between family approval and personal truth, was Ramona right to hide their marriage, as long as she did, or was the real moral failure not the deception itself, but the belief that love could ever be safely contained in shadows?